It's not every day you find yourself questioning your own sanity, but here I am, sitting in my living room, staring at the door as if it might reveal its secrets. My name is Daniel, and until a week ago, I was just your average guy living in a quiet suburban neighborhood. That was until the night I heard the first knock. It was a gentle knock, almost polite, coming precisely at midnight. I remember checking the time, wondering who could be at the door at this hour. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing but the dark, empty porch. Figuring it was some kids playing a prank, I went back to bed. The next night, the knock came again, more insistent this time. I rushed to the door, but again, nothing. No one on the street, no cars driving away. Just the cold night air and the faint rustling of leaves. That's when I felt it, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like someone was watching me. I mentioned it to my neighbor, Sarah, the next day. She's lived here longer than anyone and knows everything about everyone. It's probably just a bird or something, she said, but I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes. The knocks continued, each night a little louder, a little more desperate. I tried ignoring them, but it's hard to ignore the creeping feeling of dread that started to settle in my bones. I started to lose sleep, jumping at every little sound, every creak of the house. Then, 2 nights ago, I saw it. Or, I think I did. A shadow, just for a moment, passing by the window next to the door. It was too big to be an animal, but I couldn't make out any features. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen, staring at the empty window. Tonight, I'm waiting. I've got my phone ready to call the police, and a baseball bat just in case. The clock is ticking towards midnight, and I can feel the tension building in the air. Whatever this thing is, I'm going to face it. I have to. The clock struck midnight, and like clockwork, the knocking resumed. This time I was ready. I flung open the door, but again there was nothing but the chill of the night air. My heart raced as I scanned the empty street, feeling a mix of frustration and fear. I decided to take a different approach. The next day, I installed a security camera above the door. If someone was messing with me, I was going to catch them in the act. That night I sat glued to my laptop, watching the live feed from the camera. The knocking started, loud and clear, but the camera showed nothing. No shadow, no movement, just the stillness of an ordinary night. It didn't make any sense. How could the sound be so real? Yet the camera showed nothing. I reviewed the footage frame by frame, searching for any clue. That's when I noticed it. A slight distortion, a ripple in the air. Right at the moment of each knock, it was almost imperceptible, but it was there. My skin crawled as I realized that whatever was knocking wasn't human. I needed answers. The following day, I visited the local library, delving into the town's history. Buried in old newspaper clippings, I found a story about a house that once stood on my property. It had burned down many years ago, under mysterious circumstances. That evening, as the clock neared midnight, I felt a sense of dread unlike any other night. The knocks began, slow and deliberate. This time I didn't go to the door. Instead, I spoke aloud. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The air grew colder and the knocks stopped. A voice, barely more than a whisper, answered, "Help me." It was coming from right outside the door. I hesitated, my mind racing. Was this a plea from beyond the grave? I opened the door to an empty porch, but the sensation of not being alone was overwhelming. "I'll try to help you," I whispered into the night, unsure if I was talking to a ghost or my own imagination. Tonight, I feel a strange sense of purpose. I don't know if I'm dealing with a ghost, a curse, or something else entirely, but I can't ignore it any longer. I need to uncover the truth behind these midnight visits. My quest for answers took me deeper into the history of the house that once stood where mine now does. I learned about its last inhabitant, a reclusive man named Charles, who was rumored to be involved in occult practices. The more I uncovered, the more I felt a connection to these past events. I decided to reach out to a local medium, Mrs. Albright, hoping she could shed some light on the situation. Skeptical but desperate, I invited her to my home. As she walked through the door, she paused, a troubled look crossing her face. "There's a heavy presence here," she said, her voice tinged with unease. We sat in the living room as she attempted to communicate with the spirit. The air grew tense, and suddenly the temperature dropped. A voice, faint but clear, echoed through the room. "Trapped," it said. Mrs. Albright's eyes widened, and she whispered, "He's trapped between worlds, unable to move on." That night, the knocking came again. This time I understood. It wasn't meant to scare me. It was a call for help. I went to the door, speaking softly. "Charles, is that you? I want to help you find peace." The response was a series of soft knocks, almost like a grateful acknowledgement. I knew then that I had to help Charles release whatever was binding him to this world. The following day, I scoured the library for anything that could help me understand Charles's situation. I found an old book on spiritualism that described a ritual to help lost souls move on. It was a long shot, but I was willing to try anything. That evening, I prepared for the ritual, setting up candles and drawing symbols as instructed by the book. As midnight approached, I felt a sense of foreboding, but also determination. I began reciting the incantations, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. The house trembled, the air vibrated with energy, and the candles flickered wildly. I called out to Charles, urging him to let go of whatever held him here. The knocking intensified, then abruptly stopped. A sense of calm settled over the house, like the passing of a storm. As I sat in the quiet aftermath, I realized that my fear had turned into a mission of mercy. I had connected with something beyond my understanding and had given it a chance to find peace. But was it enough? In the days following the ritual, the atmosphere in my house changed. The oppressive air of mystery and fear had lifted, replaced by a serene quietness. It seemed as if Charles had finally found his peace. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unresolved. One evening, as I sat contemplating the events of the past few weeks, there was a knock at the door. This time, it was different. Not the eerie midnight knocking of before, but a normal human knock. I opened the door to find Sarah, my neighbor, standing there with a concerned expression. "Daniel, I need to talk to you about the history of your house," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "There's something you should know." She revealed that Charles, the previous owner, had a son who vanished mysteriously around the time of the fire. The community had speculated wildly about the boy's disappearance, but no one ever knew what really happened. This revelation struck a chord in me. The spirit I had been communicating with, could it have been Charles's son, not Charles himself? The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The young boy lost and alone, reaching out for help from beyond. Determined to find closure, I conducted another ritual, this time focusing on the spirit of the young boy. I spoke gently, offering guidance and reassurance. "It's time to find your way home," I whispered into the night. As I recited the incantations, a soft, glowing light appeared in the room. It grew brighter, illuminating a figure of a young boy, his expression one of confusion and longing. I felt an overwhelming sense of empathy and compassion for him. "Go to your father," I urged. "He's waiting for you." The boy's figure smiled, a look of relief and gratitude washing over his face. Then slowly he faded away, the light dissipating with him. The house felt different now, truly at peace. I realized that my role was not just to uncover the past, but to reconcile it. I had helped two lost souls find each other, and in doing so, had found a new sense of purpose myself.